And Amy, but in for Amy this morning, Kristen McQuarrie of the Chicago Tribune editorial board. And Kristen, we didn't get to it last week, but this is big news. Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, gave a speech at George Mason University on Thursday about providing new guidance to college campuses. Returning this idea, are you ready for this? Due process.
Whoa.
College campuses.
Whoa.
I mean, it's this American idea that somehow colleges became a safe space from. And that's made it particularly unsafe for all parties involved.
The truth is that the system established by the prior administration has failed too many students. Survivors, victims of a lack of due process, and campus administrators have all told me that the current approach does a disservice to everyone involved.
So the bedwetters were out protesting because they're, and also some of the students. When I say bedwetters, I'm mostly talking about the adults, the professors and the administrators.
Right.
Protesting because this is protecting sexual predators on campus, right? Of course, that nothing could be further from the truth. Betsy DeVos is not interested in protecting those persons who commit sexual assault anywhere, including on college campuses. But here's her description of how the system works at present and why it produces such unhealthy results.
Here's what it looks like. A student says he or she was sexually assaulted by another student on campus. If he or she isn't urged to keep quiet or discouraged from reporting it to local law enforcement, the case goes to a school administrator who will act as the judge and jury. The accused may or may not be told of the allegations before a decision is rendered. If there is a hearing, both the survivor and the accused may or may not be allowed legal representation. Whatever evidence is presented may or may not be shown to all parties. Whatever witnesses, if allowed to be called, may or may not be cross-examined. And Washington dictated that schools must use the lowest standard of proof. And now this campus official, who may or may not have any legal training in adjudicating sexual misconduct, is expected to render a judgment that changes the direction of both students' lives. The right to appeal may or may not be available to either party, and no one is permitted to talk about what went on behind closed doors. It's no wonder so many call these proceedings kangaroo courts.
Because they are. And they produce unbelievably disastrous results, particularly with an overhyped media in tow. See Rolling Stone, phony Virginia UVA rape case. See Mattress Girl at Columbia. And DeVos is, importantly, it's to emphasize this, DeVos is talking about how any system that's a kangaroo court is going to produce bad results for both the truly victimized as well as the innocent.
Right. I actually have seen quite a few commentaries from liberal columnists of late, finding themselves in the awkward position of having to defend what she's doing because even they realize that this was such a huge overcorrection on the part of the Obama administration that the rights of the accused they have no rights, and that there needs to be some sort of a fix.
Right, and the left has to do a little self-examination. Right, I thought you're the rights of the accused folks, right? You're the ACLU, rights of the accused folks, but not here. And also, I mean, DeVos shared anecdotes where victims have been treated badly, and people that actually did, or more likely than not, did commit an assault, weren't brought to justice.
Right.
So it produces bad results on both ends. So why should we defend it? Because it's part of the kind of campus totalitarian culture? No, I don't think so. By the way, this has real implications as it drills down. In Illinois, House Bill 821, for those of you scoring at home, took the federal guidelines of the Obama administration on sexual assault and codified them into state law. The only no vote in both chambers on this legislation, Jeannie Ives, West Point grad, state rep from Wheaton. The only no vote, because everybody's afraid. If you vote no, then you're for sexual assault. No. What this bill would do, anonymous reporting of sexual assaults. So you're mad at somebody, and you go put him or her through the grilling and the drill of being accused of sexual assault because you can do it anonymously.
Well, and in addition, with this federal policy, then the accused has no right to cross-examine witnesses.
Well, that's
They
right.
don't have representation of counsel. They don't get to see what the evidence is against them. I mean, it's remarkable that this has continued on like this for as long as it has.
Prosecutors can protect the anonymity of a victim. They can Jane Doe it or John Doe it. But the idea that you don't know who the alleged victim is or anything to substantiate a story, and you're going to go forth with an investigation that's that's uncorroborated, effectively,
and have the administrators decide. And by the way,
yes, exactly, without the ability to confront and without all this other due process protection.
And then you could end up on, and I don't know how many states have these, but the lists, the sexual predator lists, where you're not allowed to live in certain apartments near schools or parks, or you have to register as a sex offender every year. I mean, it can be extremely damaging. And we're going to talk to Walter Williams about that.
We're going to do that right now. Economics professor, George Mason University, Professor Walter Williams, one of the great thinkers of the last, 50 years. I don't want to divulge his age. Joins us now. Professor Williams, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Morning. So what about Betsy DeVos's speech at your university last week? How important is the new guidance that's coming from the Department of Education on campus culture as it pertains to serious accusations of sexual misconduct?
Well, I did not hear her talk, but surely what I do know about it is that there's a change in direction. I personally think, and maybe this makes me too old-fashioned, is that rape is a crime, and when you are raped or otherwise sexually assaulted, you report it to the police.
Yeah.
You go to the. It's a police matter. It's not a provost matter. It's not a college president matter. It's a police matter. But when you start reporting it to colleges, then you get all the kinds of problems that you guys were just talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's something else, and it might not be politically correct for me to say, but I'm approaching 82 years, so I'm 82 years of age, so I'm not going to worry about being politically correct. I think that a large part of the problem is that many of the young girls, young ladies, do not behave in a ladylike fashion.
Ooh, that's going to get you in trouble.
They get drunk, they use foul language, and they dance suggestively, and so if you and somebody I think one can say, well, that's no reason for the girl to get raped. But on the other hand, she's inviting certain kinds of behavior that she does not want. So I think that we need to have a cultural change as well. That is, we need to have women and men to behave in a gentleman-like fashion, and ladies to behave in a ladylike fashion. And I think that you can forestall a lot of what we're seeing.
Well, the idea of young adults who respect themselves and others. What a novel concept. I learned that in kindergarten.
Well, also, I think, I don't know how much when we do hear her policy change deals with alcohol. Of course, an inebriated woman is not an invitation to be assaulted or abused in any way, but women and men can do things to protect themselves and, don't get so inebriated that you cannot protect yourself, that you can't
Kristen,
think clearly.
Look, let me ask you this question. Do you think I have the right to put my wallet on top of my car and go to classes, go shopping, and expect for it to be there when I get back?
It would be a risky behavior if you did that.
And Wheaton, it would still be there.
Just because I have a right to do it, it doesn't suggest that it's wise behavior.
Right.
And so a woman, yes, a girl has a right to get drunk and not be raped, but is it a wise behavior?
Right.
Want to switch over to this piece that you wrote, Professor Williams. Saw it in the Daily Signal, dailysignal.com. Black leaders should focus on lifting people out of poverty, not purging statues. Here in Illinois, at Eastern Illinois University, there's a move now to rename Douglas Hall. That's named after Stephen Douglas, of course. And I assume we have a county, Douglas County, that's named after Stephen Douglas, too, so I assume that will have to be renamed as well. What's your argument about statues? I mean, you're talking about people that owned slaves and people that fought for the South in the Civil War. Shouldn't we expunge them from history?
Well, people own slaves. Well, we have to get George Washington off of our $1 bills, get Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin off. We'd have to take down the statues, take down the Washington Monument, because George Washington owned slaves, the Jefferson Monument. And you know, what these people are trying to do is, you know, they're up against the wall. That is all the programs that they've said that will help Black Americans have to a large extent they have failed. That is, we spent $22 trillion on anti-poverty programs. We have we've had racial quotas and racial preferences. We've had all kinds of other programs, and they haven't worked. So maybe some of these people think, well, and we've elected a black president, and that didn't do a whole lot. And so what the people say, well, maybe we should take down some of these statues.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to, since you brought up the issue of your approaching your mid 80s, lower 80s, you've been writing.
I don't look like.
No,
I believe
82
you.
is the new 53.
Yeah, 48, I'm going to say. You've been writing, I think, for decades about how minimum wage actually hurts lower income Americans, and you consider it to be kind of a racist policy, and I think you just had a recent column on that. We have a governor who just vetoed a $15 increase by 2022 in the minimum wage, and of course he will be demagogued during his next election as not caring about the lower middle class. What is your response to what the left continues to do with that issue?
Well, I think that I think 80% of Americans think that the minimum wage is a good idea and that it ought to be raised, and because they care about their fellow man. And so when we make policy, we cannot look at intentions. We have to look at what are the effects of minimum wage. And you see the effects if you put yourself in the place of an employer, and you must pay $10 an hour to no matter whom you hire. Will you find it profitable to hire that worker who can only he's so unfortunate so as that he can only add $5 worth of value to your output per hour? That is, pay him $10 an hour, and when that person can only add $5 worth of value to your output. Well, most employers would look at that as a losing economic proposition. So the first effect of the minimum wage law is to discriminate against the employment of low-skilled workers. That is, to discriminate against that worker who is only able to produce $5 worth of value an hour. So if you look at our labor force, who are the low-skilled workers? Well, they're teenagers in general because they lack the maturity and experience and other attributes of adults. But among the group of teenagers, there are black teenagers who not only share those handicaps in general with other teenagers, but they share the additional handicaps of living in rotten households, rotten neighborhoods, and attending rotten schools. And so if you look at the unemployment statistics, you'll see that the greatest unemployment in our labor force is among black teenagers, then white teenagers, and then low-skilled adults. So I think that the intentions behind a minimum wage law, for the most part, are pretty good. But we have to look at the effects. And then the intentions, I wrote a book back in 1990. It's called South Africa's War Against Capitalism. And the major supporters of minimum wage laws for blacks in South Africa were white racist unions that would never have a black as a member. And their stated reason was to make the cost of hiring blacks so high that contractors and employers would not hire them. Mm-hmm. Now, so South Africans have one stated agenda, and we have another stated agenda, but the effects are the same in both places.
I want to ask you a question about a piece that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote recently, calling Donald Trump the first white president. Here's what he wrote, among other things. Whereas his forebears carried whiteness like an ancestral talisman, Trump cracked the glowing amulet open, releasing its eldritch energies. Now, I appreciate anybody who vomits up a thesaurus, because I do it often. But here's what Coates is saying. He said that all the presidents previous were previous to Obama, were white, of course, but Trump is just a negation of Obama, and he's a different kind of white president, even as he describes Woodrow Wilson as just presiding over Princeton, not mentioning that Woodrow Wilson kept blacks out of Princeton's and excused lynchings by the Klan and so forth. What do you say? Because Ta-Nehisi Coates is seen as one of the leading lights of liberal black intelligentsia, and so your reaction to his description of Trump and by extension this presidency?
Well, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, and so I think it's just plain nonsense. And an additional thing about Woodrow Wilson is that he delighted in showing Birth of a Nation,
yes,
written by D.W. Griffiths in the White House. Matter of fact, it was the first movie ever shown in the White House, which is a racist movie about the Klans attacking blacks.
Yeah, Walter Williams.
And then also,
I'm sorry.
He resegregated the civil service jobs in our country.
So Trump, not the first white president, then. That's the takeaway. Walter Williams, he is the great professor of economics at George Mason University, a syndicated columnist. His most recent piece, Black Leaders and the Distraction of Purging Statues. Professor Williams, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
And thank you for inviting me. Good day.
Good day. And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.